Okay, so imagine you built the software that powers over 150 crypto exchanges around the world. You're watching billions of dollars move through platforms you helped create. And every single day, you see the same problem. Liquidity is trapped. Exchange A can't see Exchange B's order book. Traders are getting worse prices, paying billions in unnecessary slippage, and locking their funds on platforms that could collapse overnight. So what do? You build the fix. That's Yellow Network, a layer 3 clearing protocol designed to connect every exchange into one unified liquidity system. And Ripple's co-founder, Chris Larsen, just bet $10 million that it's going to work. Let me break this down. So the guy behind Yellow Network is Louis Belay, and his background is honestly the most important thing to understand here. In 2016, Belay co-founded a company called Openware. Now, you've probably never heard of Openware, but there's a good chance you've used something they built. Openware is the world's leading white label crypto exchange software. They've shipped over 150 exchange platforms globally. Think of it like Shopify, but for crypto exchanges. You want to launch an exchange? Openware gives you the whole stack: order matching, custody, KYC, the works. And here's why that matters. When you build the engine that runs 150 different exchanges, you see the entire market from the inside. You see how order books are siloed. You see how a trader on exchange A has no idea there's better liquidity sitting on exchange B. You see the spreads widening, the slippage eating into returns, the capital locked up across dozens of platforms going nowhere. Belay didn't just read about the fragmented liquidity problem. He watched it happen in real time across 150 different venues. So in 2021, Openware and Yellow merged. And the chairman of Yellow? A guy named Alexis Sirkia. And this is where it gets really interesting. Sirkia co-founded GSR, which is one of the largest crypto market makers on the planet. Before that, he was a software developer at Airbus and the European Space Center, working on Ariane rocket systems. So you've got the guy who built the exchange software, paired with the guy who ran one of the biggest market-making operations in crypto, and they're saying, look, the plumbing is broken, let's fix it. And they didn't just talk about it. They assembled a team of 120 people. They set up ClearSync Ltd in London as a dedicated research lab, and they started building what they call a layer 3 clearing protocol. Not a new blockchain, not a DEX, a clearing network. Think of it like the DTCC of crypto, but decentralized. We'll get into exactly what that means in a second. Okay, so let me explain this with an analogy that I think makes it click. Imagine you and a friend go to a bar. You could tap your credit card for every single drink you order. That works, but it's slow. The bartender has to process each one. There are fees every time. Or you could open a tab. You put a card down once, order as many drinks as you want, and settle up at the end of the night with one transaction. That's basically what state channels are. Two brokers open a channel by locking collateral into a smart contract. That's the card going down. Then they trade back and forth off-chain at insane speed, sub-second, zero gas costs, totally private. Nobody else can see these trades. No mempool, no front running, no sandwich attacks. And when they're done, they settle the final net position on-chain with one transaction. Millions of trades, one settlement. And here's what's wild. Yellow doesn't actually move assets back and forth during trading. It tracks profit and loss in real time between the two counterparties. So if I owe you $10 and you owe me 7, we don't send 10 and then send 7 back. We just settle the $3 difference. That's called netting. And it's the exact same principle that lets the DTCC reduce actual settlement by 98% every day in traditional markets. Now, the protocol underneath all this is called Nitrolite, built on a standard called ERC 7824. And here's a detail I think is important. ERC 7824 is a formal Ethereum standards proposal for chain-agnostic state channels. It's MIT licensed. It's maintained by the Layer 3 Foundation. It's not some proprietary black box. Yellow's team authored it, submitted it to the Ethereum standards process, and it's being adopted by other developers through an open SDK. They claim a single clear node can handle up to 100,000 transactions per second off-chain. And because each channel is independent, you can scale horizontally by adding more channels. No consensus bottleneck. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Didn't state channels already lose to rollups? And yeah, for general purpose smart contracts, rollups won. But Yellow isn't trying to be Uniswap. State channels are perfect for a very specific use case: bilateral trading between known counterparties. Two brokers, fixed participants, high frequency. That's not a limitation for a clearing network. That's exactly the architecture you want. So in September 2024, Yellow Network closed a $10 million seed round at a valuation north of $200 million. And the lead investor was Chris Larsen. Yeah, the co-founder of Ripple. The guy Forbes once ranked as one of the richest people in crypto. He looked at Yellow and said, "This is the one." And he wasn't alone. Consensus, GSR, Gate Labs, MV Global, NXGen, Moonrock Capital, a serious roster of institutional investors. Then, in the summer of 2025, they ran a public token sale on Republic, raised over $1 million from accredited US investors at a penny two per token. But here's the part that made me stop and reread the article. In March 2026, right around the token launch, Yellow returned over $8 million to their early VC investors. They gave the money back. Alexis Cerquilla, the chairman, said, quote, "Capital always comes at a cost, typically at the expense of relationships with the community of token holders. We refuse to let that happen at Yellow." Now, I have never seen a crypto project voluntarily return VC money. That is unusual. They kept only a small group of investors they described as aligned with the project's long-term development. And honestly, you can read that two ways. Either it's a genuine conviction play, putting community over capital, or it's a sign that things got complicated behind the scenes with some investors. I'll let you decide. Now let's talk about the token itself. Yellow is an ERC20 with a max supply of 10 billion tokens. Only about 1.94% is currently circulating, which is very low. The token launched on March 8, 2026 at about 5 cents and has pulled back to around 3 cents. Market cap sits at roughly $6 million, with a fully diluted valuation around $308 million. And here's something worth noting. Yellow is currently only trading on Yellow.pro, which is Yellow's own proprietary trading platform. It is not on Binance, it is not on Coinbase, it is not on any major CEX. They're calling it a Bitcoin-style organic price discovery approach. Whether that's principled or premature, I think depends on how the next 6 months go. There are also over 500 applications being built on the SDK, and they launched something called the Builders Alliance in March 2026 to connect developers with capital. So the ecosystem is early, but it's forming. All right, so there are over 250 centralized exchanges and over 1,000 DEXs tracked right now. Each one is an island. Each one has its own order book, and the cost of that fragmentation is staggering. $2.7 billion in aggregate slippage costs in 2024, up 34% year over year. That's money that traders lost just because liquidity was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's before we even talk about MEV, which is basically a hidden tax on every trade. Over $500 million was extracted from Solana users alone between January 2024 and May 2025 by sandwich bots. On Ethereum, 290 million in sandwich attacks in 2025. That's over 4,400 attacks per day, more than one per block. And cumulatively, MEV losses on Ethereum have now passed $1 billion. During the October 2025 crash, Bitcoin on Kraken fell to $100,000, while the composite rate across exchanges never dropped below 104,000. A $4,000 gap on the same asset at the same second. That doesn't happen in Forex. In traditional FX, spreads are measured in fractions of a basis point. In crypto, you can see a $4,000 price gap between two major exchanges. Now here's where I want to be really honest. Yellow Network deployed on Ethereum mainnet on March 16, 2026. That is 3 weeks ago. The token launched March 8th. There is no TVL data on DeFi Llama. There are no publicly indexed transaction counts yet. The market cap is under $6 million, with a fully diluted valuation of about $308 million. And there's one more thing that I think any serious researcher has to flag. Yellow partnered with Hacken for security audits back in 2021. But as of today, there is no published completed smart contract audit. Their docs page says audit and KYC are currently in progress, and results will be published soon. For a protocol designed to handle financial clearing, that's a gap that matters. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker. I'm saying it's something to watch. The $5,000 bug bounty they launched is a start, but institutional participants will want to see a full audit before committing real capital. Let me start with FTX, because FTX wasn't just a fraud story. It was a clearing failure. $9 billion in liabilities against $900 million in liquid assets. And the reason it happened is structural. FTX was simultaneously the exchange, the clearinghouse, and the custodian. All three functions in one entity with no external checks. In traditional finance, that's been illegal for decades. The DTCC processes $3.7 quadrillion a year in securities. They net trade so efficiently that 98% of the gross value never actually moves. Their peak single day was $5.55 trillion. And they exist for one reason: to separate execution from clearing from custody. Crypto has no equivalent. Zero. And after FTX, 47% of institutional participants said they are very concerned about counterparty risk. Over 75% want a permanent separation of exchange and custody functions. And now look at what the regulators are doing. On March 17, 2026, the SEC and CFTC issued a landmark joint framework. 68 pages, the first formal classification system for crypto assets. And buried in there is a line I think is incredibly significant. Quote, trading, clearing, custody, and risk management now flow across asset classes and technologies, and fragmented oversight is not a safeguard for investors so much as a source of confusion. End quote. The Clarity Act passed the House in July 2025. It mandates registration for exchanges, brokers, dealers, and custodians, with core principles on trading, risk management, governance, and asset segregation. The regulatory framework is literally being built around the exact separation of concerns that Yellow was designed for. And look at what TradFi is doing. DTCC itself got an SEC no action letter for a 3-year tokenization pilot launching in the second half of 2026. Swift partnered with Chainlink to connect 11,500 banks to blockchain wallets. Chainlink processed 7.77 billion in cross-chain transfers in 2025, up almost 2,000%. So now the question becomes, does crypto build its own clearing infrastructure from scratch, or does it wait for the DTCC to come on chain and do it for them? Yellow is betting on option 1, a decentralized clearing layer built natively for crypto, non-custodial, cross-chain, using state channels that can handle 100,000 transactions per second off-chain, and backed by the co-founder of Ripple, the co-founder of GSR, Consensus, and a team of 120 people who returned $8 million in VC money because they said community comes first. Is it early? Absolutely. 3 weeks on mainnet, no published audit, market cap under 6 million. But the problem they're solving is a $2.7 billion a year problem, and the entire regulatory landscape is moving in their direction. 5 seats, or rather, the entire playing field is wide open. Look, I'm not going to tell you Yellow Network is a guaranteed winner. It's 3 weeks old on mainnet. There's no published audit. The token trades on one platform. But the founder built the software behind 150 exchanges and saw the problem from the inside. Ripple's co-founder bet $10 million on it. The team returned $8 million in VC money. And the SEC, the CFTC, and the entire regulatory landscape are now pushing for exactly the architecture Yellow was designed around. This is either the most important infrastructure project nobody is talking about, or the most ambitious bet in crypto. And that is exactly the kind of research this channel exists to bring you. If this changed how you think about crypto infrastructure, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Did you know crypto has no equivalent of a clearinghouse? Check the Notion link in the description for every source and every stat. See you in the next one.